No! You are not ready! Stay back!
The gods of Olympus have abandoned us, so now we're off to some Norse mythology.
Good.
I'm Timur, and I'm joined by Dave Jewett.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about God of War, the rebooted version of one of Sony's biggest franchises, which is back and very different. Now, I'm a huge God of War fan. Played every single one, completed every single one, except for Ascension, because...
Is that the mobile one? The
no,
PSP?
No,
one?
those ones were good, surprisingly. It's the last PS3 one. It was like, it had a multiplayer mode, and it was... I was like, I'm alright without this, you know. But this is very different, and anyone who has a lot of experience with God of War can immediately tell it's different in a lot of ways. We played from the very beginning, the first two and a half hours.
Okay.
And the first thing I noticed was it doesn't open like a God of War game. God of War games open in quite a dramatic fashion with a set piece or like a really strong moment that sticks with you. The first one had the gods of Olympus have abandoned us, and Kratos kind of kills himself. Second one had the Colossus of Rhodes, where you're fighting the Colossus. This one opens with like a solemn moment where you're just chatting to your son, and that's a big part of this game. It's like trying to recast Kratos as a more sympathetic character, and he does that despite doing all of this.
He looks so sympathetic right now.
He does
really
not look sympathetic at all. So those are things that we probably won't be able to discuss in any major way. What we can talk about in a big way is the combat. And as you can probably tell here, it's very different. The older games, they were all built around the Blades of Chaos, which were these kind of like really long-range weapons that you could like hit multiple people with.
Those are the things chained to his wrist, right?
Chained to his wrist.
I never actually played the original God of War. But
right, but you've seen enough imagery of him to know how iconic those blades are. But he loses those at the end of, I think it's 3. This is the new axe that he has, and it's like frost-based. So it's got a bunch of really cool properties, and we were talking to Cory Barlog, who's the director of this game and has directed God of War 2 and written a bunch of other ones, and he actually said like God of War was created in response to I can't remember who it was. There was a Japanese designer of combat games. It might have been someone at Platinum, might have been someone else. I don't want to call someone out, but they said Western developers basically don't know how to make combat games, and so they made God of War, which was like. And it was hugely successful. As a fan of Japanese combat games, I wouldn't say God of War kind of came anywhere close to what they were doing. But this, on the other hand, does.
Okay.
This comes way closer to being like something that they could give to a Japanese developer and say, this is our take on what you're doing. Because it has some of the fluidity of Japanese action games, the mechanics behind those kind of like character action games like Bayonetta, Vanquish and stuff like that. It doesn't have the flair of it, but it kind of trades that in for a kind of a really heavier feel, a heft, and this kind of like realism, I want to say, but it's not like realistic, but like it feels like that.
Right.
I imagine if you took kind of the heft and like the chunkiness of Gears of War and combined it with a combat from like a Platinum game, a Devil May Cry-ish.
But you wouldn't expect Kratos to move like Bayonetta, would you?
No, you wouldn't. But he does in this case in some instances. Like as you can tell, like we're in an exploration section here, but we'll soon see. Like he's got a mixture of moves that he can use. Like the axe is kind of the centerpiece of the combat. So use it as like the main melee weapon right now. But as you can see here, you can throw it and then summon it back. And that's all manual. Like, it's not automatic. You choose when to throw it, and you choose when to bring it back. And as you saw there, like, on the way back, it hits things, and it damages things.
Okay.
So, like, you use that to your advantage, and just with that one small gameplay facet, it's already got more depth than the original God of Wars. Those had different weapons, and you could use them in interesting ways, but, like, they all felt isolated. They never felt connected to each other. When you do something like throw your axe, while that axe is out doing its own thing, you've got your hands, you've got your fists, and you've got your shield. So it's like you can hit an enemy with your axe a few times, knock them into the air, throw your axe off at a distant enemy, and if you land it in their head, it freezes them in place because it's a frost axe.
Right.
So they're basically locked out of the fight for a little while. While they're locked out, you can kind of like use your fist to do extra damage, pop them back into the air. While they're in the air, summon your axe back, and on the way back, it'll kind of chip them. So like you've got that, and then you can do other moves as well. You unlock abilities through upgrading, and you can do things like freeze them and knock back and stuff like that. So it becomes this kind of really fluid combat system where you're switching between weapons and abilities and that kind of stuff. Although we didn't get to see like the full potential of it, from what I played in the first 2 hours, I felt like I was thinking about combat in a way that I hadn't in the previous God of War games. Before it was like, what's currently the most power? What's the right weapon for this enemy? And although there is some of that, now I'm able to go through weapons and figure out, all right, mid combo, this isn't working, so I'm just gonna throw this axe in that direction, pin down that enemy, and use my fists. So here we're fighting one of the major mini bosses, and he was featured in the E3 trailer, and that boss is a massive behemoth and does a lot of damage, and it's all about like ducking and moving and then getting in, doing an attack, and then getting out and like shooting his weak points to slow him down a bit. And that, if you've played Dark Souls, I hate to bring up Dark Souls in every single thing about combat, is a thing that you will sound familiar for Dark Souls players. And that feeds back into the combat itself. So when we were talking to Corey, he was like, I can tell the kind of game you like based on the way you play our game and interact with our combat, which was really fascinating to me. So like he told me, I know you like Platinum games, and he's right. I love like Platinum's games. I love the Clover stuff. I love Kamiya and all the stuff that Devil May Cry and Bayonetta and Vanquish and all that kind of business. And he was able to tell that without me telling him, based on the way I played, because I was doing loads of combats. I was aiming for combat. I was doing loads of combats.
So much combat going on.
I was doing loads of combos and like popping into the air and trying to like manage enemies and always moving and like dashing towards enemies. And he was able to tell that, and looking around the room, he could also figure out who liked Dark Souls, because other players were kind of like approaching the enemy, like locking on, doing the circle strafing, and then finding an opening and getting in, doing a big amount of damage, and then getting out.
Right.
So like there's styles. So that just says that there's enough depth and enough like open-endedness in this combat system to kind of accommodate a bunch of styles, which is really fascinating to me. It's completely the opposite of the way God of War felt before. It's always been an enjoyable combat experience, but I wouldn't describe it as deep and really like creative. It doesn't reward you for being like figuring out the nuances and trying to implement them. So you can see here he's frozen the frost axe and then punts him at the other enemy, and that's really important. So the original God of War games, it looks sick. First of all, like it is. That's one thing it hasn't lost. God of War was always about like it was always a power trip,
right?
And this game is going for something different now. It wants to humanize Kratos. It's got his son there, Atreus, who you can see chilling out in the background, firing arrows, and he actually does what he wants. He's controlled by AI, but he works into your combat. So if he's assigned to a button on your controller, and all it does is he fires an arrow. And basically what that does is it draws aggro for you.
Okay.
And you can try to point him as well using your own aiming reticule, and he'll fire where your reticule is. So on some enemies you can aim for weak points. But his most important use is drawing aggro. So he'll pull an enemy away from you. In the early game, we're only fighting like variations of Dragos, who are these kind of like zombie-like creatures from Norse mythology. And for the most part, they were all pulled by him. But I'm not sure how it works if there's like a really powerful enemy and you're trying to get him off you. They probably ignore Atreus. But you need to do that, and you need to constantly be moving, because while all the games, they kind of just gave you a bunch of enemies to fight, it almost felt like here's a room. Almost felt like Dynasty Warriors in a certain way. Like they always had different styles and they always had different abilities, but you were there just to stomp them,
right, and
feel good while stomping them. The enemies in these encounters, they feel more placed and they feel more like designed in a certain way, and like they've chosen, handpicked, so that they can present you specific challenges and try and encourage you to play in certain ways and figure out the ins and outs of combat. And you really have to spend a lot of time thinking about how you crowd control and who you prioritize. and you do that using abilities like throwing your axe and freezing someone in place, using Atreus to draw attention. And like if it's like really key because you also have like a quick turn button, which is something that you usually only see in Resident Evil.
Yeah.
That's because you really need to quickly be able to snap around and address something like a long range enemy firing at you, for example. In like that is like we're seeing right here.
And obviously Kratos is a larger than life character, and you're obviously making him look very good right now. But is he actually quite? Will an enemy be able to easily down him? Because it sounds like with all these abilities to keep crowd control, it sounds like he's constantly under threat.
Yeah, so the way they like Kratos, like you said, is a big deal. He's killed gods at this point, and so like he shouldn't be able to be downed by a Drago. They can down you and they can kill you, but the way they do it is often by whittling you down in big numbers, which is another reason why these encounters are so like over the top. They managed to somehow have loads of enemies, but without falling into the trap of just having, let's throw 30 of these enemies and be Dynasty Warriors. They like think about how many enemies there are, and there's usually a lot of them, and also make sure that they're a different variety and they're challenging in specific ways.
Right.
But like the brutality of Kratos is still there, although they're kind of like that's one part of him that fans always loved. Like he was unrelenting. Everything he did came with a grunt and a groan, and it's like the ripple of muscles, everything from like opening doors to opening chests, and that's still him. And like when he lifts up, stone doors, you can hear him. You can actually see some of his back muscles ripple a bit. So if you're like well into Kratos' muscles, you will see them. Another thing that you saw there was the kid was kind of looking at some runes. And that plays into the story here. Kratos is a Greek character, almost Greek mythology character. So his boys were like Zeus and the lads. They're all dead now because he's killed them.
Yeah.
So now he's in like this Norse realm. He shouldn't be there, and we're not quite sure why he's there yet. And although I won't spoil some of the stuff that happens that we saw, there's some questions from other people of Norse mythology about why he's there as well. But he's completely disconnected from the culture. Like he doesn't understand anything. He can't read those runes.
Right.
He doesn't understand much about the culture of Norse culture, and he gets all that through his son. So his son, obviously, he had another wife. In the previous games, he had a child, but they were lost because he killed them.
Spoilers for
the
game
very
like
beginning.
15, 16 years ago.
Yeah, so that was kind of like the thing that was tormenting him and what led him on his mad blood rage rampage. But now, he's had another family. And the son, he and his son are on like a journey right now. They're on like not a vision quest, but they're basically doing something. They're just trying to reach the top of a mountain.
Right.
And along that way, he's kind of trying to help his son grow as a person and also himself, because he's a bad father.
He's a bad dad.
But he's trying. Like he knows he has to try, and he knows that he needs to be better. And in return, like the son is trying to help connect him to the world around Kratos, to the world around him. So whenever you see things like runes and stuff like that, Kratos is all he can do is like, what does it say? And the kid figures it out and like is able to tell you. And that's an interesting way of making a character, like a secondary character, important to you and feel meaningful. So we have this thing in video games where companion characters often feel like they're annoying and wasted, but then we have certain characters like Joel and Ellie. Those are a good pairing, and I think Sony Santa Monica and the God of War team have looked at Last of Us quite a lot. Obviously, Naughty Dog is a sister studio to them almost, and you can see they've drawn clear inspiration from them. He's not only kind of like his path to learning about the world, but it's also like for the player, it's how you learn the story and how you learn about Norse mythology as well.
And I suppose one of the ways to take a character that's so large like Kratos, who's killed gods, one of the few ways that you can take him out of his comfort zone is to put him in an environment that's so alien to him.
Yeah, so that is really fascinating because it speaks to like a nuance that wasn't there in previously. Like Kratos was so focused on just killing things that you never got to really experience Greek not culture, but like the Greek mythology in any meaningful way, because you were too busy just destroying it.
Just pulling Zeus's jaw off.
You're just like doing crazy stuff. So this game is more about exploration, and it rewards you for learning about the world. Like I'm not saying it's taking inspiration, but it comes after like the learnings we have about, and like the kind of trend of people wanting to be in worlds and be absorbed by those worlds, like Assassin's Creed and and various other games, and even Last of Us, you want to see more of that world. And Sony Santa Monica are clearly in touch with that and are making sure you can do that. So you can go around. There's like branching paths now, areas for you to kind of like explore, and at the end of them, like you'll find like, oh, there's a nice like painting here. Kratos will just look at it and it looks like a painting, but then Atreus will jump up and be like, oh, this is this legend about this god who ate the sun and his brother who ate the moon, and they became wolves and etc. etc. So he'll like break it down. Exactly. He'll break it down for you, and that's really, really cool and fascinating, and like it's a really cool way to bring Kratos, like make Kratos feel more meaningful and grounded in a world without kind of taking away the kind of hero style of him, you know, being this massive hulking madman who's just trying to destroy everything and kill everything. But yeah, it's a really fascinating. I'm way more surprised about. I'm way more confident in it now than I was previously. You know,
Right.
like. The idea of bringing Kratos back, I wasn't totally against it, but like I had faith in Corey and that team, and now that I've played it, I feel a little more confident about it. I feel good about the combat. I hope that it develops in a more, you know, it adds depth to it. Right now, it's looking real good. I've got a lot of tools, and I'm already thinking about, when I left, I felt I wanted to play the demo again, but obviously they wouldn't allow me because I felt more confident at the end of it with everything that I had. And like, there's still things that I wasn't able to explore. Like one of them is we saw briefly earlier, the crafting and kind of upgrade system, which is new. Like in the previous games, you were just given things. Like you'd do puzzles, which there are loads of puzzles in this game as well. And your reward for doing those puzzles would be a new bit of gear. In this, you have the merchant who will help upgrade your stuff, and you can build stuff, and it's reflected on your character model, which is also new. You know, before you'd have equipment, and you'd only see that equipment when you used it, and it would like come out of this magic bottomless sack that he probably had on him, and it would just appear and then it will vanish again. Whereas now your character model changes as you equip new weapons.
Well, I hope so. It's probably freezing there. He's always had his top off, isn't he?
He doesn't need clothes, just pure heat coming
Warmed
from
by
his
muscle
massive
and
rippling
anger.
muscle. Yeah. But yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised, and as like it's shot up my most anticipated list for this year in a significant way. And that's not me just like, you know, kissing butts here. Like I don't do that stuff. I'm really genuinely super excited about this. It's like pushed a whole bunch of other high profile games out of the way, and yeah, I'm really eager to play more. It's coming out on April 20th, so we don't have
420.
420. Destroy it.
420 smash it with an axe. Well, you've sold me on the game. Like I said, I've never played God of War.
I think you're really gonna like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right because you're a massive dork. You love.
I mean, you're not wrong.
You love Warhammer and different kind of like fantasy, and you like Norse mythology as well, as far as I know.
I'm probably gonna like crank up the Immigrant Song on repeat.
Down
Play through the entire game.
Yeah, and it's really, really like they've clearly paid attention, and they've got like language experts in to kind of decipher all this Norse runes and put together their own kind of like take on it, and they've done the legwork to make it an interesting world. So yeah, and it plays really well. So I think you really, really like it. If this is your first God of War, like I think it's a really good entry point. And I think most people, if it manages to land what it does, they might come away thinking, oh man, I need to go back and play those. So that's what I thought of God of War, the reboot. Very excited for it. If you'd like to see more of the game, keep your eyes on GameSpot.com. You can also visit our YouTube page, youtube.com/GameSpot. Wouldn't you know it? Where we have more of this game. We've got trailers. We've got a feature with Cory Barlog coming up. It's an interview, which is kind of very interesting. So you should keep your eyes out for that.
Can we rank video game dads now?
I think I need to see where he goes, but he's pushing up. He's getting to the top, I think.
Kratos is daddy AF.
He is daddy AF. Like, he's daddy goals. Like, if you were a dad, you want to be as ripped as he is.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, and have a cool axe that you can summon at any point. Imagine if your kid was
Go
acting
on a school run.
Yeah, imagine if your kid was acting out and just an axe appeared in your hand every time. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter. I'm at TimorH.
And I'm at Irregular Dave.
And we will see you soon.